Boeing's share price is plunging after the company announced a temporary halt in the production of its troubled 737 MAX aircraft. Deliveries of the planes have been suspended for the past 9 months, causing big losses for the US aircraft maker. And as Mobin Nasir reports, the latest stoppage could even be more costly for Boeing, its suppliers and the US economy.
When it first took to the skies in 2016, the Boeing 737 MAX was supposed to take the aviation industry to new heights. Within 3 years, the company had received nearly 5,000 orders for the plane as carriers lined up to take advantage of its better fuel efficiency and aerodynamic design. But in October 2018 and again in March, the aircraft was involved in crashes that killed 346 people. The US Federal Aviation Administration grounded the aircraft, and it was revealed that Boeing had ignored faults in its Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS software. Those problems were determined to have caused the crashes.
Those pilots never had a chance. These loved ones never had a chance. They were in flying coffins as a result of Boeing deciding that it was going to conceal MCAS from the pilots.
Since then, the company has kept on producing the planes, but their deliveries have remained suspended. That's cost Boeing about $9 billion so far, and it's also taking a toll on the US economy. Earnings of large 737 MAX suppliers like General Electric and American Airlines have fallen. US exports are expected to take a 7% hit this year due to lower sales at Boeing. And experts say the economic cost is higher than that of the government shutdown this year, which was the longest in US history. Now Boeing says it's halting 737 MAX production from January, a move experts say could take an even bigger toll on the US economy.
For Boeing to announce that it could suspend production, and we don't know how long that would be, is really going to create some chaos for the airlines that are involved in this, as well as the 600 or so companies that are part of the 737 MAX supply chain and Boeing itself. It's going to have substantial impact on the US economy, and as it already has, I think will affect our trade deficit.
The company is still redesigning the automated control systems on the 737 MAX. It hasn't said how long this will take, and it will also need regulators' approval before the aircraft can take to the skies again. Boeing is one of the largest companies in the US and can absorb the losses that pile up until then. But for the scores of smaller companies that work with the aircraft maker, the turbulence ahead could be an existential threat. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Savio D'Souza joins us live now from London. He's the Aviation Director for the business valuation consultancy Brand Finance. Welcome to the program, Savio. Now, Boeing had been producing around 40 737 MAX jets a month ever since the grounding of the aircraft in March, and they've just been really out on the tarmac gathering dust. Are you surprised that it took them so long to decide to suspend production altogether?
Thanks for having me on the program, Oscar. So we at Brand Finance value the most valuable brands in the world and how strong they are every year. And we've been watching the aerospace and defense sector quite closely over the past 2 years because of the 737 MAX coming into production and the issues in the last year. I'm not surprised by the decision to take so long, given that it's been consistent in their guidance. They've been consistent in the guidance to the market. And the other thing you've got to remember is that the supply chain of Boeing is so large that the wider effect on their reputation, amongst their local suppliers, international suppliers, and the local economy, could have taken a larger hit if they've just stopped production abruptly. So in a way, they've managed a bad situation as well as they could have. The thing that I am surprised by is, the naivety shown by Boeing's management with respect to the FAA approval process. I think, they were quite optimistic about how long it would take. You have to remember that the FAA has also seen a drop in its reputation in the past year. And to someone from a third party perspective, you would never expect them to approve it in such a short amount of time. So that's what surprised me more in this whole process.
Yes, let's look more into that because we've been hearing reports that the FAA, the US aviation regulator, really isn't happy with the way Boeing has conducted itself, as you hinted at. They issued a rebuke against Boeing for adding pressure on the approval process for the 737 MAX aircraft. Do you think Boeing really has pushed its luck when it comes to the FAA? And is that relationship beyond repair?
I think, given their past relationship, I think they've probably overestimated and probably underestimated the situation. They've also probably underestimated, the loss of face of the FAA and U.S. industry in general. So that's a bit of a misstep from Boeing, and that's cost them dearly. You can look at their market cap from when the crash happened. That's dropped from about 240 billion then to about 180 billion today, so about a $60 billion drop. And there are lots of analysts forecasting that to get worse.
Okay, now tell us more about what you think will happen in the future. Obviously, Boeing expects that the FAA will eventually recertify the 737 MAX aircraft, but do you think passengers, the flying public, will be happy to fly in them if and when they're allowed to return to the skies?
That's an interesting question because Boeing have never really, at least in the recent past, have had to deal directly with the flying public in terms of gaining the trust, explaining that the aircraft is safe to fly. So that's going to be something new for them to deal with. And the wider issue of regulators, other country regulators, getting them on side as well, and the airlines as well. So it's going to be a bit of a learning process. For the common man on the street, it's sad to say that a lot of them probably won't even know that they're flying on a 737 MAX until they're in the air.
Interesting. Okay, now let's look at the impact this has had on Boeing's long-standing rival Airbus. What effect has the 737 MAX scandal had on its fortunes?
So you would expect, because it's a duopoly, that Airbus could just go and steal Boeing's customers. But given the nature of the industry, the supply chains are very long. It's a very capital-intensive business. It's not as easy as that. Airbus have a very long backlog, which they're finding hard to fulfill. So this is even before the 737 MAX crash. And they're having a tough time fulfilling their own orders, let alone trying to steal Boeing's. So there won't be a direct impact in that sense. I think where the opportunity is for Boeing, from a brand perspective and business perspective, is that they could probably steal a march on Boeing's other segments, so other flying segments, so namely the mid-market aircrafts. Because Boeing is in crisis mode at the moment, they're a bit distracted, a lot of resources have to be diverted to fixing the 737 MAX program. So I think that's where the opportunity lies for Airbus, rather than a direct switch from 737 MAX to their own aircraft.
Okay, Savio D'Souza in London, it's been great to get your analysis. Thank you.